cover salary, we'll cover benefits, we will cover travel.
For the whole year.
For the 3 years and a half, because we want to be sure that before the end of the quinquennium, the transition is in place for the divisions to absorb this position. So I want you to understand this and serve as, if possible, as ambassadors, so that the administrations understand it and probably do it properly. Also, I wanted to let you know and let the department know that we added a few extra dollars into that appropriation with the understanding that it might be perhaps necessary to come up with some additional materials, some additional media programs, perhaps new approaches to experiment on stewardship during the quinquennium. So we will need to dialogue about that. That all has, at least I wanted to let you know that some provision was made for that. I was a stewardship director for 12 years. I did it concurrently with my position as a conference treasurer. During those 12 years, maybe more than that, I can't remember, I developed a number of things, a number of ideas, a number of materials, and some of them you develop completely, some of them you really only have kind of an embryo and never go back to them. One of the ideas that became clearer in my mind as a result of a book that I read, and I encourage you to find it. The book is called The Steward by E. John Hall. John Hall is a theologian, missiologist that teaches at McGill University in Toronto. He had different ways of looking at stewardship. I took the ideas that came from him and I began elaborating a little more. Yes.
Share the name of the book again.
Yeah, The Steward.
The author?
The author is E. John Hall, H-A-L-L. He, I don't know if he's alive. He didn't impress me as an older person. He was kind of middle-aged at the time. But his approach to stewardship included several arguments. And he didn't go any farther than that. In my teaching of stewardship, I always taught stewardship from several dimensions. So I began thinking, what if we can actually put together the arguments and the dimensions? Will there be anything that will come out of it? So I, over a period of time, and I have not done it completely yet, I asked Penny to read my text, and she gave me a few very valuable comments, and it means I have to go back and rethink and rewrite. But that's what we do. That's how we develop things. I did it for myself. I didn't do it to teach stewardship. I'm not teaching stewardship, at least until you ask me to. That's why I reiterate my offer, that when you have an appropriate meeting and you want to have stewardship education and administration together, we're ready to see if we can combine it. So in all of this, what I tried to do is, by looking at the arguments that he made in his book, and looking at the dimensions that I was teaching stewardship from, I tried to see if kind of a grid would come out of it, and if there would be enough biblical support so that I could actually see in one shot what stewardship is all about. Am I making any sense to you? So with that came the other idea. The idea of presenting stewardship as with those different arguments and with those different dimensions as if they are faces of a diamond. So a diamond is a unit. It's a very strong unit. It has many faces. But some of the arguments you can say are very obvious. The other arguments, the ones that I added, which are basically the scatological argument and the ecological argument. And the ecological argument, the first time I read it out of John Hall. I didn't read it from any other person before, and I have not read anything really except for the work of John Davidson from Andrews University, anything after that. It's an argument that is kind of dormant in our church. If you are intelligent enough, plugged enough into the mentality of those that are postmodernist, those that are younger generation, people that worry about the environment, people that worry about destroying resources in a way that will never be repaired, then you would realize that the Bible is explicit in our function as stewards of the earth. We're not here to destroy the earth. We are not here to terminate the resources. We are here to administer it and live better. So what others actually in the green movement take as an element of fight and protest, we have, thank you, this is the book. This is the book. Okay? Read it and underline it and do everything you can with it. It's not perfect, but it has a lot of stuff. Where was I? Forgot my thought.
Speaking about the environment.
Yeah, we went into the environment. If you are able to look at this, the different aspects, different arguments, and I want to show them to you. I'm not going to be discussing this whole thing. I'll give it to you. This is a work in progress. So I'm not going to give you the PowerPoint yet because it's not finished. I'm not going to give you this as a finished product because it's not done. But it is something that I'll have to do quite a bit of editing yet. The first argument, and I want you to see that the faces of a diamond, the facets of a diamond, are a perfect illustration for stewardship, in my opinion. Let's examine 5 different facets and their supporting arguments. The first one, and that comes out of the book, out of the John Hall book, is the theological argument. And I have summarized the theological argument here, and if you go down that column, you find the 5 different, what did I call them? Dimensions. I'm talking about the ownership, authority, and power, management, relationship, motive, and character. Those 5 points. When I was for 12 years teaching stewardship, that was what I talked about. I talked about ownership. I talked about management. I talked about relationship. I talked about motive. And I talked about character. Those are the 5 points. Coincidentally, the other 5, the arguments are also 5. So 5 and 5 came rather nicely. When you look at the theological argument, and I am preparing in the PowerPoint so that each argument will have each one of the 5 dimensions. You can actually use it as a teaching tool. You can stop here, and this would be one full lesson. Ownership, you're dealing with that. There's plenty of Bible texts on that. There's plenty of stewardship material around that. So the argument, the theological argument, places God as the creator. Now, why is this argument powerful? It is very powerful for the older generations, not for the younger generations. According to statistical studies, for the younger generation, this idea that God owns everything doesn't mean a thing. So, the second argument, the second dimension would be management. We are stewards. We were created to have dominion over the land. It's traditional. The theological argument is the most traditional stewardship argument we have. Then you go into the relationship aspect, and you can go down here to the square where it says relationships, and you can find a few texts and a few phrases that will get you going in that direction. When that relationship exists, we are good stewards. When that relationship doesn't exist, we are not. Then we go into the motive dimension. Why do we do things? What moves us to act? And I mentioned in my previous presentation that this generation today is sensitive to the fact that they are willing to return the tithe and give offerings out of gratitude. Not because they will be receiving blessings, but because they are grateful. That means we need to keep that in mind. Don't take stewardship out of the context of righteousness by faith. Keep it within righteousness by faith. Okay? And the teaching of stewardship in the context of grace is crucial for this generation. If you're going to reach the millennials, if you're going to reach the younger guys, don't move away from grace. Are you there with me? Yeah. Then comes the last point here, and that is the argument that is character. Why? Why all this? Why this funny way of giving? Tenth. The Lord has either a funny sense of humor or, I don't know, it's all in tenths. A tenth of what you have is mine. Why a tenth? Why a day out of 7? Is there any rhyme or reason for that? I think you can actually build an excellent sermon on that. So each one of these dimensions gives you plenty under each one of the arguments to build enough to appeal to, depending on the generation, the best case you can on stewardship. Now let's move to the second one, which is the Christological argument, and that comes out of that book very strongly. And I was grateful to Harold Lee, who was at the time the stewardship director of the North American division, for pointing that book to me. I never saw the Christological argument. For me, the theological argument was everything. But have you found people in your churches that everything is Jesus Christ, 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 and nothing else? There's no God, no Holy Spirit, no You haven't found anyone like that, I guess, because you're looking at me like if I'm talking Chinese. Well, if you look at the Christological argument, you will find that Jesus Christ was the creator. That's what the book of Colossians says. He also is, beyond that point, he is the chief stewardship of God's plan. So you don't have to leave Jesus Christ at all. You keep in the Christological argument, you can actually be in the heart of Christology. Then you can go move into the aspect of relationship. The relationship between the Father and the Son is the reason why I have grace today. Grace flows from the Father and the Son to me. If you want to make one of my favorite texts is obviously Isaiah 53, which says that God actually placed upon him the sin of us all. You can actually build one of the most beautiful series based on the Christological argument, and you don't have to leave there. Stay there. And then comes the motive. For God so loved the world that he gave. And then you have the issue of character. My salvation does not depend on how well I feel, how good I feel today in the morning about my relationship with God. I think I'm saved today. I'm saved because Jesus Christ gives me his merits, his righteousness, and I don't have to worry about how I feel emotionally. All I need to do is to submit to his will and confess my sins, and he, the Father, looks at me as he sees the Son. So you understand what I'm trying to tell you? What I'm trying to tell you is this: the Christological argument is extremely spiritual, and you don't need to leave it. It is actually ideal for the generation that follows the baby boomers. Okay? If you look at the following argument, is the ecclesiological argument. And Christ is the husband and the head of the church. And you go on and on and on. I'm not going to get into all of the arguments. I just want to go, and by the way, it is under this argument that we can actually point to the storehouse. Where is the storehouse? Are there alternative storehouses? Can people give anywhere they wish? I wish we could say yes. The truth is, biblically, I don't think so. Not when it comes to tithes. Not when it comes to offerings. It's very clear. It's clear in the sanctuary. It's clear also in well, if you don't need to move from the 5 books of Moses. It's right right there. It says in the book of Numbers and in the book of Leviticus, don't bring your offerings anywhere else, because they had altars all over the place. He said, stop that. Come to the sanctuary. Okay? You can say the same thing. There are churches all over the place. There are programs all over the place. There are ministries all over the place. This belongs in my house. Are you close? Are you with me? All right. Following that argument, you move then into the eschatological argument. This is pure Adventism. We are the ones that talk about the second coming of Jesus. I don't know of any other faith that is actually, actively doing it, not to the extent that we are. I had a very interesting conversation with a rabbi about 3 weeks ago when I was on my way to Israel. I boarded a plane here in Newark, New Jersey. And because we were on our way to Israel, well, a bunch of rabbis come into the plane. You know, New York is full of them. And this man comes, you know, young, I would say, probably not more than 50, 52. Very young, very vibrant, conservative. Not orthodox, but conservative. He didn't have the, what do you call it, no, he had his yarmulke, he was in black and everything, but you can see that he was not dressed. I would say maybe he was Orthodox, but he didn't have the long hair on the side. And he sat next to me. Imagine, it's a 10-hour flight. It's a long flight. We go straight from Newark, New Jersey to Tel Aviv.
Long discussion.
We got into an argument. He came, sat next to me, and he asked me, who are you? What do you do? I said, nice to meet you. I'm a Seventh-day Adventist, and I'm on my way to Israel. Seventh-day Adventists, we keep the Sabbath. Yes, we do. And that was the only thing on which we agreed. From then on, it was just downhill. But I learned a few things from him. I learned that if it is not in the Torah, it doesn't count. Because for him, the book of Isaiah is written by a prophet, and that inspiration is one step below the inspiration of Moses, who spoke directly with God. So when we got into the argument of, you know, original sin, which they don't believe in, I tried going into Isaiah 53, and he said, no, there's no such a thing as original sin. There's no. See, Adam paid for his sin, I paid for mine. There's no such a thing as sin per se. So, and we would argue like for about 45 minutes straight. And then he would just stop and fall asleep. So I was reading, so whenever he would wake up, I would just stop reading and we would keep the argument. It was very interesting. What was interesting the most, I think, was that when he started talking to me, he was explaining to me about keeping the Sabbath and the Sabbath and the Sabbath and the Sabbath, and he would actually throw this Jewish Hebrew phrases to me, and I don't speak Hebrew. I have no idea what he's saying, you know. So at the end of his paragraph, I guess, I said, "Boy, you sound so good." I said, "The only thing I can say to you is just don't miss your Savior." And he stopped, went to sleep, slept for about an hour and a half. After an hour and a half, he woke up and just picked up exactly where we left it. He said, "What did you mean when you said don't miss your Savior?" And we picked up from there again. And we went into Isaiah, and we went into the prophets. He wanted to drag me into the New Testament so that he would actually destroy the New Testament, because that is just garbage. And I said, you don't need to go, I don't need to go to the New Testament. All I need to know is in the Old Testament. But then when we were into the argument of original sin, he said something that I did not know. I said, he said, we don't believe in this thing of Jesus Christ and a man that becomes a mediator and all of that. I said, I don't believe in that either. Because Jesus Christ was not a man. He was God himself. And he looked at me and he said, that is paganism. So we kept arguing. Finally, in the middle of the argument, I said, listen, and let's forget about all the prophets. Let's go into the law. You said that there's no original sin, but then what's the point of Leviticus 16? When the Yom Kippur comes along. Oh, Yom Kippur. I said, yes, yes. I said, yes. I know about all about Yom Kippur. I have been with you in your synagogues on Yom Kippur. I've been there. I've asked permission of your rabbis to be there on Yom Kippur. And they have welcomed me into your synagogue. They have given me a shawl and a yarmulke, and they have allowed me to be there for the whole day. And I have read your entire Seder, which means the book. They read the whole book the whole day. That's when they pray. I said, I know about Yom Kippur. I said, but do you understand what was happening in Yom Kippur? Do you understand why? Can you tell me why the high priest would go into the most holy place, and at this point, he's lost? Okay? He doesn't know what Leviticus 16 is. He doesn't understand the meaning of Yom Kippur. Mind you, Orthodox, conservative rabbi. Okay? And I said to him, why is that, what is the need of the high priest going into the most holy place with the blood to drop the blood on the mercy seat and place the issue of sin in the hands of God himself? And he said, oh, I need to read that. And he just reached for his Bible. And he went and flipped pages, and he finally found Leviticus 16. He was a little upset because he didn't know what I was talking about. And he kept reading. I said, just go further down where it's about the 6th verse, 7th verse. And that's when I nailed it. We were talking about the heart of Judaism, which he professes, and he did not understand. Now, why am I saying that? The eschatological argument is the most Adventist of all arguments. It is the one that is based on Yom Kippur, on the Day of Atonement. And what will happen after the Lord ends the Day of Atonement and comes out of the sanctuary to complete the rest of the story on sin. Are you following what I'm trying to tell you? What I'm trying to say to you is that in these arguments I find enough biblical and theological elements to never leave the Bible in my presentation. Now, you can do it any way you want to, but that's the way I see it. Now, then comes the final argument, which is, and tell me what the time is looking like. Okay. What is it? 10 minutes. Oh, in 10 minutes we can actually destroy the world and build it up again. The ecological argument. I mentioned a few things to you about the ecological argument again. Biblically, you have lots of things you can actually find in the Bible. Professionals, new, younger guys, millennials. This is something that appeals to them. Present stewardship with that. Study it. Look into it. And make a presentation that will say to them, if you are a good steward, you will care for the earth, not because the earth is holy, but the God who made the earth is holy.
Oh, yes.
So it was interesting also. And just a few months ago, I was in a conversation with Ganun Diop about the biblical, and what do you call the encyclical, or what's the name of it? The papal encyclical. Pope Francis wrote something very interesting. One of the things he said is that the Virgin Mary now stands in heaven next to her Son to care for all creation. In other words, it's placing the Virgin Mary in the context of the mother of Christ, and as if she is now way above creation herself. Okay? So why am I saying that? Because Catholics are now making the ecological argument using Mary. Very interesting. I think if you want to find something very, very interesting, that would be it. Why am I saying all of this? Is because I believe that we do not have to go outside of the context of our message or the scriptures to find enough to make the point for these 5 arguments and these 5 dimensions. I gave them to you in this. It's just so that it will whet your appetite. Okay? I wish you well. Teach stewardship with all your heart. Study it well. Prepare yourselves. Find good illustrations. Write your best sermons. And don't forget that you need to engage the new generation. If you leave them behind, because the old people will be there always, if you leave the young people behind, we will have no church tomorrow. Okay? God bless you.